There is I'm talking about one huge thing that nobody is talking about. And to me, it's the most important thing that nobody's telling or showing you about Florida State. And what's really funny about this is when I present you with this information to all the Florida State fans or the people advocating for Florida State and whatnot, you don't even have a rebuttal. I know we're mostly college football fans around here, but yesterday was one of the craziest days I've ever seen in the sports world in a very long time. Obviously, you had the butt whooping that Georgia put on Florida State, and then you had arguably one of the most controversial, and it's not even controversial, what am I talking about? One of the worst calls you're ever going to see in the Detroit Lions games versus the Cowboys. But also, meanwhile that was going on, I don't know if some of you saw this, you probably didn't, LeBron James hit a three-pointer, or they thought it was a three to tie the game, and they review it and they call it a 2. For me, it was a dream day because my two favorite sports are basketball and football. Also love me some drama here and there, and it was a combination of all of that. Man, oh man, what a day it was. And even as to when I'm speaking and making this video, you still got Cinnamon Roll fans crying on Twitter. Trust me when I say this, we're going to get to that in just a second. Just be patient. We didn't have our starters. We had 20 plus players opt down. We didn't want to be there. We should have been on the championship and blah, 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 blah. You know how it goes. And I'm not mad at them for bringing up the opt-outs because, yeah, it did play a big role and a big factor in this ball game. I said it in the reaction after the game y'all saw last night, and I said it leading up to the game. But, and I have an extremely big but, you better believe this, there is one huge thing that nobody is talking about. And to me, it's the most important thing that nobody's telling or showing you about Florida State. And what's really funny about this is when I present you with this information to all the Florida State fans or the people advocating for Florida State and whatnot, you don't even have a rebuttal. There's nothing you can say. You know why? Because it's cold, hard facts. We got a lot to talk about. I'm beyond excited to get into this video. There's a lot going on. The playoffs, they're tomorrow. And oh yeah, New Year's is tomorrow as well. I've completely forgot about it. It's New Year's Eve, but I've never really celebrated it. I don't know what there is to celebrate. Now that I think about it, I guess the reason I haven't celebrated it is because I don't drink and I don't go to the clubs, I don't party. I don't do any of that. So maybe I'm the oddball out in here, but hey, if you do any of that stuff, just please be safe. I've jibber jabbered enough, but all right, Matt, blah, blah. Shut the crap up. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. Oh, yeah, guys, I apologize. I meant to say this in the intro, but I'll say it now. No big deal. This topic is so important. It's the one and only topic we're speaking on. There's many other things going on in the college football world, and we'll get to those later today. Also, I'm doing the preview for the Texas and Washington game later tonight, so stay tuned. But for now, at least, let's lock in, let's get down to business, and let's talk about what in the world's going on with Florida State and Georgia. Do you really want me to get up here and sound like a broken record player? You saw what happened last night. I don't want to talk about the game itself too much. 63-3. It was complete domination. Georgia looked like one of the best teams in the country, per usual, and Florida State looked like one of the worst teams in the country. They look like an FCS team, in my humble opinion. It was bad, and the greatest example you can use, ironically enough, is a team last year who made the playoffs, TCU. That's pretty much how the game went, and it sucks the season ended this way for Florida State because they was a really good ball club. Let's just get all the obvious stuff out there. They got dominated on offense, defense, special teams, you name it. Like I said in last night's video, from start to finish, it was an unfair matchup. With all that being said, let me throw this in there. Georgia, congratulations. You look like Georgia, okay? You didn't shock me last night whatsoever, to the slightest of bits. You can go look at my videos. Go look on Twitter. I released my rankings after the SEC Championship. I still had Georgia in the top 4. I think Georgia is currently better than Washington. I said it after the SEC Championship, so don't act like, oh, I'm hopping on the hype train because they obliterated Florida State by 60. No, 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 no. I don't want to hear any of that, but I digress. I'm not here to talk about, oh, should Georgia made the playoffs? No, they shouldn't have made the playoffs because they lost their last game to Alabama and Washington went undefeated. But more importantly, Washington has their starting quarterback and they beat Oregon twice. We're not here to talk about the playoffs, okay? We're not doing that, so don't even start that up in the comment section. But anyways, getting back on track here, let's talk about it, right? The excuse, the $1 million excuse. Oh, we had 20 plus players opt out. What are most of your Florida State advocates saying? Well, Georgia didn't beat Florida State by 60. They beat their third stringers by 60. That's the one I'm seeing everywhere. They beat our third stringers by 60 points. They didn't play our starters. And that's really funny to me because Georgia wound up putting in their backup quarterback to start the second half, and they were still marching up and down the field with their second and third stringers. But that's a different conversation for a different day. I guess y'all aren't ready for that argument. But I'll give you the benefit of the doubt on that argument because some people may try to debunk that and say, well, Matt, when Georgia's backups came in, They were fresh and ready to go. Our backups were playing the entire game. And that's fine. That's a fair argument, but here's what you can't debunk. As big as a crybaby tantrum, let's call it how it really was, as big as a crybaby freaking tantrum that Florida State threw after not making the playoff, Georgia had every right to feel the same type of way. Even after losing to Alabama by 3 points in a close game that could have went their way if a ball bounced this way or that way, Georgia was a much better team than Florida State, even with Florida State starters. I'm not talking about what just happened and what transpired on the field yesterday. I'm talking about when the season ended weeks ago. I'm talking about with Keon Coleman. I'm talking about with Jared Verse, all the great players for Florida State. If Georgia would have played the same Florida State team that played Louisville, they would have dog walked them. They still would have beat them by 30. And I'm not here to play the what if game, but my point is, Georgia had every right to be as upset as Florida State for not making the playoff. But what happened, and ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I love this because this isn't just about college football. This is a life lesson. One of my favorite quotes, and I remember telling myself this at an early age of 14, 15, 16 years old, is it's not what happens to you in this life, it's how you respond to what happens to you in this life. I'm going to say that one more time because there's a lot of people out there that like to play the victim mentality. It's not what happens to you in this life, it's how you respond to what happens to you. I've said it before, I'm going to say it again. I feel terrible for the Florida State fan base, program, the football team, the players, everybody involved for doing what you're supposed to do to make the playoffs, and you still didn't get in. You won every single game. You did what you were supposed to do. It's a sad situation, it really is. And on the flip side, I feel bad for Georgia for going 12-0 and slipping up against one of the best teams in the country in Alabama. You lost by 3 in the SEC championship, and you still didn't get in. So let's get this straight. You had two teams that were really good this year that had arguments to be in the playoffs, and they didn't get in. And over the past couple of weeks, I paid attention to it. I feel like a lot of people didn't, though. We got to see the difference in the cultures at Florida State compared to Georgia. On one hand, you had something bad happen to a person, in this case, in scenario Florida State, and they responded terribly. Everybody quit. The fans, the players, everybody, the coaching staff, they quit. They had a victim mentality. They had the why me mentality. My life sucks. I can't believe this happened, so I'm just going to quit, man. This ain't right. This ain't fair. And on the flip side of it, and why it was so beautiful to watch unfold, is you had another person, in this case and scenario, the Georgia football team, the Georgia program, have something bad happen to them. But the difference was they handled it way differently. How did they respond? They didn't cry. They didn't moat. They said, oh, you're not going to put us in the 14 playoff? Well, we're going to show you why we're one of the best 4 teams. There wasn't even a sign of victim mentality. And that's why Georgia is a national champion. I'm not talking about college football. I'm talking about it life. Georgia football players, that program, the fan base, the team, everything about them, they're winners. And I don't want to get too all motivational on you, but it applies to college football because it's a big part of what just happened. Winners don't complain. You'll notice in this life that winners, maybe you're a winner, maybe somebody in your family is a member, maybe your cousin, brother, whoever you know, that's a winner. You know who a winner is. They never make excuses. You take the cards you get dealt in this life and you play with them, whether you like it or not. You don't fold them, throw them under the table, and get up and leave and cry. The game that we all watched yesterday, that was the difference in cultures. Nothing more, nothing less. And you're still going to have your fair share of people bringing up the excuses and also talking about, well, Florida State, they didn't want to be there. They didn't want to play in that game. They felt like they got snubbed. Well, all right, how about I point to this? Do you think Alabama wanted to play against Kansas State last year? I mean, come on now. Y'all know this. Alabama, the only thing they care about is championships. They don't care about a meaningless game against Kansas State. And when I say they don't care, I'm talking about on the grand scheme of things. In 10 years, we're not going to be talking about that game. But guess what? Alabama had 2 of the top 3 players in the NFL draft play in a quote-unquote meaningless game against Kansas State. That doesn't just say a lot about Will Anderson and Bryce Young. It says a lot about the program and the culture at Alabama. And it's the same thing for Georgia. That's why I love Georgia so much. The culture at Georgia and Alabama, it's on another level. Nobody even comes close to them. And it's not rocket science, guys. That's why Georgia and Alabama are the best. I could sit up here for the next 30 minutes to talk about this, but I got a busy day on my hands. We got some more videos to make. Let me know your thoughts down below. But